In July 1940, with France fallen and Britain standing alone against Hitler's war machine, Winston Churchill authorized the creation of an organization unlike anything British intelligence had built before. He gave its leader, Hugh Dalton, a simple and audacious mandate: set Europe ablaze. The result was the Special Operations Executive, a secret agency tasked not with gathering intelligence in the traditional sense, but with waging irregular warfare deep inside Nazi-occupied territory. The SOE operated outside the normal chain of military command, reporting instead to the Ministry of Economic Warfare. This unusual arrangement reflected its unusual purpose. While MI6 focused on espionage and gathering information, the SOE existed to destroy things, to organize resistance movements, and to make occupied Europe as costly and difficult for Germany to control as possible. Some within Britain's traditional intelligence establishment viewed the new agency with suspicion, even resentment, seeing its agents as reckless amateurs playing at war. That friction between SOE and MI6 would persist throughout the conflict. Recruitment for the SOE cast an unusually wide net. Agents came from every imaginable background: bankers, poets, safecrackers, aristocrats, and factory workers. Fluency in a foreign language and detailed knowledge of local geography mattered more than military rank. Many recruits were themselves refugees from occupied countries, willing to return to enormous personal danger to fight for their homelands. Notably, the SOE also recruited women for active fieldwork, a decision that broke sharply from convention, since women could often move through occupied territory with less suspicion than men of fighting age. Training took place at secluded country estates across Britain, often called special training schools. Recruits learned unarmed combat, silent killing techniques, explosives handling, parachute jumping, and Morse code radio operation. Instructors included men with genuine underworld experience, brought in specifically to teach lockpicking and safecracking. The training was notoriously demanding, and washout rates were high. Those who passed were prepared to be dropped by parachute or landed by small aircraft and boats into occupied France, Norway, Yugoslavia, Greece, and numerous other countries under Axis control. Equipment for these agents came from the SOE's own specialized workshops, sometimes nicknamed Churchill's Toy Shop. Engineers there designed an extraordinary range of disguised weapons and gadgets: explosives hidden inside lumps of coal, pins that fired tear gas, and radios small enough to be concealed inside suitcases. This inventive spirit gave rise to enduring legends that later inspired fictional spy gadgetry, including some of the tools imagined decades later in James Bond films. Once inserted into occupied territory, SOE agents worked to organize and arm local resistance networks, providing weapons, explosives, and training to civilians willing to fight back against German occupation. Their operations ranged from small acts of sabotage to missions with major strategic consequences. Perhaps the SOE's most celebrated success came in Norway, where German forces were racing to produce heavy water, a critical component in early nuclear research at the Vemork hydroelectric plant. In February 1943, a team of Norwegian commandos trained and equipped by the SOE carried out Operation Gunnerside, skiing through brutal winter terrain to infiltrate the heavily guarded facility. They planted explosives and destroyed the heavy water production equipment without a single shot being fired or a single casualty on either side, a mission later regarded as one of the most successful sabotage operations of the entire war. It significantly delayed German nuclear research, though historians continue to debate how close Germany actually came to developing a viable weapons program at all. In France, the SOE's F section worked closely with the French resistance, helping arm and coordinate scattered resistance cells ahead of the D-Day landings in June 1944. SOE trained agents and supplied networks carried out attacks on rail lines, communication networks, and German troop movements in the days surrounding the invasion, helping to delay German reinforcements from reaching the Normandy beaches. Among the most famous French agents was Violette Szabó, who conducted intelligence and sabotage work before being captured by German forces. She was later executed at Ravensbrück concentration camp and was posthumously awarded the George Cross. Not all missions succeeded, and the SOE's record includes devastating failures alongside its triumphs. The most notorious was the collapse of the Dutch resistance network through what became known as the England Spiel, or England Game. Beginning in 1942, German intelligence managed to capture an SOE radio operator in the Netherlands, and, through his radio, began feeding false information back to London while continuing to request further agents and supplies. For an extended period, SOE handlers in Britain failed to recognize that their Dutch network had been compromised, despite a missing security check that should have signaled danger. As a result, dozens of agents parachuted directly into waiting German hands. Most were captured, interrogated, and ultimately executed. It remains one of the most painful intelligence failures of the war, and the exact reasons London ignored warning signs for so long have been debated by historians ever since. Female agents played a disproportionately visible role in the SOE's most dramatic stories, partly because their contributions defied expectations of the era. Odette Sunsom and Noor Inayat Khan both endured capture and brutal treatment at the hands of the Gestapo, with Khan being executed at Dachau concentration camp in 1944. Their courage under interrogation, refusing to break despite torture, became emblematic of the sacrifices made by SOE operatives across occupied Europe. In total, of the roughly 470 agents sent into France alone, more than 100 did not survive the war, a stark reminder of how perilous this work truly was. By the war's end in 1945, the SOE had operated in nearly every occupied country in Europe, as well as in parts of Asia through its Force 136 branch, operating against Japanese forces in Burma and Malaya. At its peak, the organization employed roughly 13,000 people, though the number of agents actually operating undercover in the field was far smaller, a tightly guarded corps surrounded by an extensive support structure of trainers, forgers, radio operators, and analysts back in Britain. Assessing the SOE's overall military impact remains a subject of genuine historical debate. Some historians argue that its sabotage operations, while often dramatic, had limited effect on Germany's overall war-making capacity compared to the strategic bombing campaign or conventional military operations. Others contend that its true value lay less in material destruction and more in sustaining morale and organizational capacity within resistance movements, keeping the flame of active opposition alive in occupied countries during years when conventional liberation still seemed distant. The coordinated resistance sabotage around D-Day, in particular, is widely credited with meaningfully disrupting German reinforcement efforts during the critical days after the Normandy landings. The SOE was formally dissolved in January 1946, its functions and some personnel absorbed into other branches of British intelligence, including what would become the modern Secret Intelligence Service. Many of its files remained classified for decades, and it wasn't until the 1990s and 2000s that a fuller public picture of its operations, successes, and failures began to emerge through declassified documents and academic research. Even today, some SOE records remain sealed or were destroyed in the post-war years, meaning parts of its history may never be fully known. The organization's legacy also lives on through the individuals it produced. Several SOE veterans went on to notable post-war careers in politics, business, and writing, and its wartime activities have inspired countless books, documentaries, and films exploring the moral complexity of a war fought not just on battlefields, but through sabotage, deception, and quiet acts of extraordinary courage carried out by ordinary people asked to do the unthinkable. The SOE remains a striking example of how Churchill's Britain, facing seemingly hopeless odds in 1940, chose not only to defend itself, but to actively strike back into the heart of occupied Europe, using courage, ingenuity, and a network of secret agents willing to risk everything for liberation.